Greetings everybody, Super Tuesdays here in the Holy Land, in the Holy Apple, Holy Hilltop, Tal Binyamin, center of the world. We are on the 10th day of the month of Tevet. Hope everyone is having a meaningful and uplifting fast of the 10th of Tevet, the year 5783. This is our second part, a must view, a must-see. Breaking news, Jews, come home to Israel now. The danger is real. Israel. Okay, last week we spoke about statistics. How many religious institutions have been built in the last 20 years, according to a recent Pew study, how many Chabad houses, and on the other hand, reality in our face about anti-Semitism, the rise. Tremendous record set this year, 2022. The record set of anti-Semitic incidents, how many of them are reported? A small minority of them. Can imagine the real numbers. They're not 2,717. Imagine what the real numbers are. We spoke about Jewish stupidity. Maybe let's build more Holocaust museums. Let's sit down. Let's have dialogue. Let's have boycotts, financial boycotts. Let's not have financial boycotts. Let's try to explain Jewish wealth so they won't be so incited against us. We'll explain why Jews have proportionally more money. All nonsense. All garbage. And we spoke about the tremendous Jewish law, the law of nature, that the nations, that Esau hates Jacob, the nations hate the Jewish people. And we asked the question, perhaps America is different. And then our answer, as we begin, is America different? Our answer is a resounding N-O. America is no different, because laws of nature are the laws of nature. You could throw a ball up and it's going to come down on your head. You can keep on throwing it up to think that it's going to continue going up in the sky, but it's still going to come down on your head. That's reality and not hallucination. So let's get real. Let's continue. Why did God create such a law of nature? We spoke in the times this anti-Semitism, this anti-Jewish hatred was around from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob. We discussed it at length. We discussed how much all of these figures, the Jewish people or these individuals, contributed to their societies, to their communities, to their cities, to no avail. Because there came a time that the music, to face the music, and it was too late. It was over. It was, that's all, folks. Why is there such a nature? It says in verses in the Torah and in many sources, very simply, you know why there's this nature? To keep the Jews separate and unassimilated from the nations of the world. That is the purpose of this law of nature, to keep us separate. Look it up in Numbers chapter 23 verse 9. In Deuteronomy chapter 32 verse 12. In the Midrash Tamura, page 583. Black and white. To keep the Jews separate, to keep the Jews unassimilated. If they were welcome into the League of Nations, into the community of the world, they would assimilate, as we see today in many parts of the world. The Jewish people are being annihilated through assimilation, through intermarriage. That is exactly the reason of this law of nature of hatred of Jacob, of the Jewish people. This is also the reason why there is such a law of nature, this hatred, is to use as a threat against the Jewish people that if we assimilate, if we do not do what God wants us to do, God will unleash the nations of the world upon us if we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. So it is either a threat, or if the threat is unsuccessful, it becomes a vehicle to punish the Jewish people for not following in the path of God. So those are two reasons why this is a law of nature. In a side issue, one might ask, well, Yehudah, you just spoke about the tremendous danger and annihilation that is taking place today in our times of assimilation. So we see that there is what happened to the law of nature, that the nations hate the Jewish people if there are so many non-Jews that are assimilating and marrying Jews. So, first of all, as we know, when the Jewish people left Egypt, they were farly outnumbered by the multitudes of the nations that, quote-unquote, converted. But their conversion was not a true conversion. When you see 10 plagues, when you see miracles after miracles, and all of a sudden you want to join, you're just joining the bandwagon. You're not a serious convert. So therefore, they were at least 3 times more than the Jewish people. So there were 5 million Jews that approximately left Egypt. So we're talking about 15 million. So many of the cases of assimilation, intermarriage that we see, these are not what we call true blue Jews. These are the multitudes of nations that have been around since the time of the Exodus of Egypt. That's number one. Number two, there are 2 ways to defeat the Jewish people. One is through, it's a verse in the Torah. Hatzileni na miyad achi miyad Esav. Save me, God, from my brother, from Esav. Well, we know Esav is his brother. And if you say his brother, we know he's Esav because we only had one brother. Why do we have to say his brother Esav? One word is enough. No, one word is not enough. If the Torah tells us 2 words, brother and also Esav, these are 2 faces that Esav comes to destroy the Jewish people. Sometimes during history they have come through the sword. That is the law of nature, the hatred of the Jewish people. It's brought about through the sword. Other times that hatred of the Jewish people is masked, is sugar-coated by so-called love. Let us destroy the Jewish people spiritually. It's the same exact hatred of the Jewish people. It's the same desire to bring the Jewish people down. One way is through the sword, and the other way is through love and assimilation. This is done. You might approach somebody and say, hey, is that your intention? Do you want to spiritually destroy your husband, your wife? And they'll tell you, no, I love them. Are they telling the truth? Yes. But, however, if they were ever to come in contact with their subconscious, if they were really real and they could really look at themselves deep and subconsciously, this is what is taking place. This is a way to destroy the Jewish people through love. You know what they say? Make love, not war. We see this two-faced approach, amazingly, on our next major holiday, coming up in a couple of months, Purim. On one hand, Achashverosh, he throws a party in order to have the Jews assimilate and mingle and mix with the non-Jews. He even marries a Jewish woman. It's true he didn't know that she was Jewish at the time, but when he knows that she's Jewish, he doesn't get divorced. His ideology of how to destroy the Jewish people is through love. Invite them to parties. Assimilate them through love. Through the good times. And on the other side, he had his henchman, Haman. Haman said, no, let's go kill them. It is exactly the same coin, just with two faces, two sides. But it's one coin to destroy the Jewish people. So, this is the way to destroy the Jewish people. It is the same law of nature to bring the Jewish people down, either through violence, through the sword, or through love, through assimilation. It is the same dead end. Or another possibility is that there are sparks amongst the nations. There are sparks of holiness, of people that were at one time Jewish, and as the generations pass, they have this connection to the Jewish people. They might not be religious, or as yet they might not be religious, but they do have Jewish sparks from previous generations within them. So, therefore, it's a different situation. It's not a Gentile per se that's coming and hugging a Jewish person. It is somebody that is Jewish themselves or have Jewish sparks that come and embrace the Jewish people because they feel a connection to the Jewish people. So that's also something that happens. Okay, an amazing story of the Talmud. Put on a seatbelt for this one. In the Talmud, in the tractate of Bava Batra, page 73, side B, there are various stories of the holy sage Rabbi Bar Chana. And one of the stories goes like this. There was a boat at sea, of course, the sea representing exile, suddenly spots what looks like a safe haven island, but really is a dangerous mammal who over the years has had sand build up on his body, and after the sand, vegetation began sprouting up until, to the naked eye, it might seem like this is an island in the middle of an ocean. So, we have passengers on the boat. They're in the ocean looking for some kind of safe haven, which they finally found. They find an island. They get out of the boat and they begin the good life. They begin cooking, drinking, until one day, throughout all the cooking, the heat, this gigantic, dangerous mammal begins to feel like, remember the Ohio players? Fire! They called out fire. That was a great song, Fire. Yeah. So this dangerous mammal, a killer whale or something, is beginning to feel the heat, and he starts rocking and rolling. And the people on the island, quote unquote, they begin to understand that this ain't no island. And we better get moving fast before we end up in the ocean. So they run off this quote unquote island And they jump into their boats. And if it wasn't for the fact that their boat was right next to this island parked, then they would have been goners. What is this story about? We know that all of these stories of Rabba Bar Chana they're tremendous secrets of the Torah that are being funneled through these imaginative scenarios. So what is the deal here? Now, there are numerous amount of commentaries that explain this interesting, phenomenal story with a one-track explanation. Let me give a list, a short list. There are more, but these are some of the Jewish scholars that have commentated. We'll give the answer in a minute, but let's get their names first. We have the Tiferet Tzvi, was Rabbi Azriel Karlinstein, a leading rabbi of Lomza in Poland in the mid-1800s, on page 43. We have Rabbi Eliezer Weisblum, the son of the famous Noam Elimelech of Luzansk. In his book, Perach Levanon, on page 35, we have Rabbi Shalom Rabinovich. In his book, Otzer HaMidrash, page 52. Rabbi Avram Cohen, in his book, Malel LeAvraham, page 182. Rabbi Bitzalel Birak, in his book, Menorat Bitzalel, page 56. They all say the same line, that the people on the boat in the middle of the ocean are the Jews that have been exiled from the land of Israel. And the island, so-called island, which is really a dangerous mammal, the island that they think that they have found, the tranquility, the peace, the Garden of Eden that they have found, are the countries of the nations that the Jews end up. And then they become well-to-do, the Jews. They become accustomed to living amongst the nations. They even become members of the government, of the ruling parties. And then, when they think that they found their Jerusalem, their land of Israel, God decides to shake up the situation. And everything changes. What the Jews had become accustomed to, the luxuries, the good life, it all comes apart. That is the whale waking up and shaking. And the Jews realize that this ain't no Jerusalem, this ain't no land of Israel, this is no Garden of Eden. And they escape. They escape via the boat. What is the boat? Each of these books that I mentioned, 6 books that I mentioned, talk about perhaps Torah, repentance, etc. That is the boat that will save the Jewish people. However, listen closely. There were other commentators that understood a little bit differently. The part of Jews being in exile, the ocean represents the exile. True. The part of the Jews finding their Garden of Eden amongst the nations, forgetting. that they are strangers, forgetting that they do not belong here in the exile. All agree on those points, but listen to the difference here. In 1838, close to 200 years ago, there was a holy Kabbalistic rabbi that was born into the world. His name was Rabbi Eliezer Chaim of Scalia. He was a tremendous holy Jew. He was related, he was a descendant of the Shla Kadosh. He was a descendant of the Baal Shem Tov from mother's side and the paternal and the maternal side of his family. Born in 1838. In the later years of 1800, in the late 1800s, Rabbi Eliezer Chaim of Scalia brought down this Talmud of Rabba Bar Chana in the tractate of Bava Batra, page 73b, and he had a prophetic vision. Amazing. He said, you know what the boat is? The boat is not Torah. The boat is not repentance. You know what the boat is? The boat is America. The boat is America. This is in the late 1800s. He said that island that we think is the Garden of Eden, Europe, is a death trap for the Jewish people. They must leave to America. Folks, do we understand that? Are you still sitting in your chair? Get up, scream. Amazing prophecy. He saw this in the late 1800s. He not only saw this, he not only did he preach this to others anywhere he went. We must leave Europe. He left himself. In the year 1892, Rabbi Eliezer Chaim moved to America, where he passed away on the 5th day of Iyar. Folks, there's a reason I'm telling you the date that he passed away. To me, this is an amazing point. He passed away on the 5th day of Iyar. That should ring a bell. That is a day where, after 2,000 years, Jews once again Hashem created an independent Jewish state. On the 5th day of Iyar, what has saved the Jewish people is the land of Israel. The reason why a Jew can stand up proud in the world is because there is a land of Israel, because there is an independent Jewish state in the land of Israel. So folks, he was correct. Rabbi Eliezer was correct. However, he passed away on the 5th day of Iyar. What is the message behind that? The message is that now the boat is no longer America. The boat is now the land of Israel. When you begin to feel the shake and bake, the rock and roll on that island, you understand that it is time to leave. You must escape. They understand that this is no Garden of Eden. This is a death trap. And they got to move fast. And that boat is the land of Israel. That time, that period of time is our generation. This is brought down by Rabbi Yisrael Schenkman, originally of Lita. Afterwards, he was a famous he led the rabbinical court in Lita. He moved afterwards to Atlantic City and later to, this is all in the early 1900s. He writes this in his book, Tiferet Yisrael, on page 84. He understood, he writes in black and white, that in our times the boat is the land of Israel. Rabbi Moshe Avigdor Amiel, he was born in Poland in 1882. He moved then to Belgium in 1920, then to the land of Israel in 1933. He became chief rabbi of Tel Aviv until his passing at an early age in 1945. He writes the same idea here. The boat in the story of Rabbi Bar Chana is the land of Israel, that without, the Talmud says, that if it wasn't for that boat, they would have been destroyed. That is the final words of the Talmud. This is brought down in the second volume of Rabbi Moshe Avigdor Amiel's book, El Ami, volume 2, page 45. He says amazingly also, Rabbi Amiel, he brings out an amazing lesson on the Bamidbar Rabbah, chapter 21, paragraph 23. He says an amazing idea. He says we see on the holiday of Sukkot, we see on this holiday that the sacrifices go down. The first day we bring 13 bulls, next day 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, till we get to 7. And this teaches us, he says, a tremendous lesson in understanding Jewish life in the exile. Listen to this closely. Our sages tell us in the source that I just brought, listen to this closely. This is the way that a person should look at the exile. When Jews first arrive in exile, they are welcomed with a smile and a hug. The first day, they are given top-notch chicken. And then afterwards, the second day, it goes down a little bit. Things are changing a little bit. They are given fish. The guests are given fish. On the third day, they are given some type of filled fish. It's not even fish. On the fourth day, they are given vegetables until it continues to decline, until they are given grains to eat. Rabbi Amiel, amazingly, was a genius, a Jewish genius. In all facets, not just Torah, in life, in science. Amazing, amazing person. He tells us this is exactly the experience of the exile. It starts out many, many times, not always, but many times it starts out on a high pedestal. And then slowly it goes down, and then it goes down, and then it goes down further. And the idea for the Jew is to catch it in time before it's too late. Do we catch the changes? The wind is changing direction. It is not the same America of 20 years ago, of 40 years ago, of 60 years ago. Times are changing. Listen to this. Amazing. One of the Hasidic rabbis, Rabbi Yaakov of Hositin, he came from Poland to the land of Israel. He was a very interesting Hasidic figure. He was a tremendous supporter of the land of Israel in the early days. He passed away in 1953. he had a whole Hasidic group in Tel Aviv. And he has a book, it's called Oalei Yaakov. This is on page 63. He takes an amazing look at the 20 years that Jacob spent at the house of Lavan, what I call the White House, from above. And folks, listen to every word here. Our lives depend on it. An amazing take by Rabbi Yaakov, the Rebbe of Hositin. When Jacob, the first step of our journey is Jacob is forced to leave the land of Israel, what we call exile. Once again, what happens to Jacob and what happens at the White House, in the house of Lavan, this is a mini series of the Jewish people in exile. So, step number 1, exile, leaving the land of Israel. Jacob leaves because he's afraid of Esau. Next step, Jacob is welcomed with open arms and love and kisses by Lavan. Step 3, Lavan says, these are all verses in the portion of Vayetze, you are a part of us. You are part of our society. You are one of us. We are one. Next step, Lavan, at the time he meets Jacob, he is in a wreck. His city is in a wreck, an economic wreck. He has no money, no shepherds, no sons. Next step, Lavan, he's the most generous person, opens up. We don't want you to work for free, Jacob. Give us a price. We want to pay you. Wow, what a beautiful soul this Lavan is. We go further. Yaakov is cheated by this lovely individual, Lavan, 100 times, our sages tell us. Now listen closely. Jacob, 20 years later, he notices a slight change in the facial expression of Lavan. A slight change. Now this is brought down in Midrash Rabbah 73:8. God comes to Jacob and tells him, your father-in-law's face has changed, and you continue sitting here outside the land of Israel. This could be found in Breshit Rabbah 73, chapter 73, paragraph 8. God has to come to Jacob and wake him up from the slumber of exile, 20 years in exile. Jacob, look at the facial expression. Comes one of the greatest commentators on the Midrash Rabbah, Rabbi Chanoch Zundel from Bialystok, and he writes, the facial expression of Lavan was not a facial expression of being furious, being angry. It just had changed slightly. Folks, why is this important, the facial expression? Because Yaakov, this is the Rebbe says, the Rebbe of Hositin says this in his book. Jacob was able to pick up the signs of change, the winds of change. He was able to pick it up at an early stage. Thus he saved his life. He saved the life of his family, of his children, of his grandchildren. He was able to save his wealth that he accumulated when he was working for Lavan, even though he was cheated 100 times. He was able to save it all because he caught, what is it called today in the medical world? Early detection. That is the most important. Early detection. Because if he would wait, the Eitz Yosef says, If he would have waited till the face of Lavan had changed to a furious look, it would have been curtains for him. Or he would have been able to escape with the clothes on his back and not much more than that. Those that wait for the face of the nations to change into a furious face will be left behind. God forbid. Will be left with nothing. The smart Jew is able to detect the change of the face of the nations, of the non-Jews, at an early stage. Folks, a record year of anti-Semitism, 2022. Not only is the handwriting on the wall, it's gone a lot further than handwriting on the wall. You have to be blind. You have to be Ben Shapiro, not influencing the majority. You have to be blind. All of Lavan's turnaround, economically, socially, that was brought upon by Jacob's blessing, by Jacob's present, did not stop Lavan from wanting to kill Jacob. It was only through God's intervention that did not happen. It doesn't matter the benefit that the Jewish people have brought throughout history, throughout all nations of the world, and today in America. What's the solution? The holy Ema Banim Smecha, Rabbi Yisachar Shlomo Teichtel, head of the Jewish court of Slovakia. In his amazing book, he wrote a book with thousands of sources without any books. He did not have any books with him. He remembered it. He remembered all the sources by heart. The tremendous Torah giant who was murdered in the Holocaust. And he wrote a tremendous book, Ema Banim Smecha. In no less than 8 places does he write, the reason God sends us tragedies in the exile is to awaken us to return to the land of Israel. In no less than 8 places. In fact, you might say that his whole book, Ema Banim Smecha, was written to wake us up to the fact that we have to wake up through the tragedy of the Holocaust that was unfolding during his times. His whole book was written to wake up, to understand that this is God's message to us. The tragedies are to wake us up to come back to the land of Israel. The redemption is coming closer and closer and closer. The bells of redemption can be heard. And this now, the direction of the Jewish people is returning to the land of Israel. So folks, you could look it up, pages 38, 82, 145, 144 to 145, 209 to 210, page 211, page 214, page 282, page 299. It's written straight out in black and white in Breshit Rabbah 33:6. You will find no rest. The reason why there is no rest in the exile, it says this by our sages in the source I just gave you. Look it up. The reason why there is no rest, why there is tragedy outside the land of Israel, is only to ensure that the Jewish people will return to the land of Israel. Because if there was tranquility, if there was peace, the Jewish people would forget the land of Israel. They would forget about it. They would become comfortable. So therefore, this is all written. The one of the great rabbis of the previous generation, Rabbi Yaakov Moshe Charlap. He was a genius. He was a Kabbalist. He was a codifier of Jewish law. He learned with all the great ones. He learned with all the great ones in the land of Israel. Never left the land of Israel. He was born in 1882 and died in 1951. He has dozens of books. He was the rabbi of two totally different communities. He was the rabbi of Rechavia. My mom happens to live there. Hi, Mom. And Sharei Chesed. Sharei Chesed was a Orthodox community. It was a very religious community. Rechavia was totally opposite in those days. It's changed. But it was totally opposite. It was a secular stronghold. And he was able to fuse the two communities. Amazing. He writes, listen closely. Put this on your hearts, always. He writes this in his book, Ma'anei Yeshua, chapter 45. Listen to every word. Engrave it on your hearts, in your hearts, on your hearts. During every period of history, there is a certain central point, I'm translating, that through this point comes down to the world a tremendous light of abundance. Through this central point, every generation, there's one centerpiece point in Judaism. And through this point comes down all of the blessings, all of the light to the world, to the Jewish people. This central point, through it, through its observance, through embracing it, lights up the entire Torah and mitzvot, commandment, observation. The forces of evil subconsciously know that if they are able to extinguish this central piece, this central point in Judaism, they will succeed in stopping the great holiness and spiritual light and benefits for that generation. Before the coming of Messiah, listen to the words, Rabbi Charlap, a Torah giant. Before the coming of Messiah, that central point is the land of Israel. The land of Israel. From this point, the land of Israel, from this point comes forth to our world everything, all of our spirituality, all of our materialism comes through this one blessing point, this one centerpiece called the land of Israel in our generation. Without this central point, there can be no influence of holiness in the world. Do you listen to his words? There can be no influence of holiness in the world. We think we're building holiness. We think we're building up the Torah. In America, it is a farce. It is false. There can be no influence of holiness in the world without this central point. No wonder the entire world, says the rabbi, concludes, is fixed on taking away the land of Israel from the Jewish people. Now we understand all of these jihads and all of the world trying to take the land of Israel from the Jewish people. What do they care? A small piece of land. Oh, they understand. They understand well that everything is dependent in our generation on the land of Israel. All abundance, all blessing, spiritual, material, is dependent on the land of Israel. That is the boat of our generation, folks. The Netivot Shalom, the famous holy rabbi of Slonim, in his book on Genesis, page 75, an amazing. He says, today, the center of Judaism, the center of Torah, the center of Chassidut has returned to the land of Israel. And now we understand that the Torah tells us in Midrash Zuta, the Torah tells us that there can be no presence of the divine presence rests within the Jewish people, within the land of Israel. Though throughout the generations, the Rebbe says of Slonim, there was the divine presence that followed the Jewish people throughout the exiles. However, in our times, the divine presence has returned to the land of Israel. Is there anything left? Yes, there might be a little bit. There might be a spark or two left outside the land of Israel, yes. But it's a spark or two. It's not enough to breathe. It's not enough to stay alive. Folks, if we look at the last 70, 80 years, 100 years, what is the direction? You have to be blind. You have to be ignorant. You have to be... I have no words not to see the direction God is bringing the world to. The biggest Jewish community in Europe, in Germany, in Poland, destroyed, gone. North Africa, the Sephardic Jewish community, gone. In Russia, closing the gates over there. God is closing the gates of the world, of the exiles. The direction is so clear to anybody with eyes to see. The direction is the land of Israel. God is showing us over and over and over again, has turned the land of Israel into a spiritual oasis. The center of Torah, the center of Chassidut, center of fearing of God. Cannot we see, can we not see the handwriting on the wall? It's much greater in our times than just the handwriting on the wall. Don't forget, there's 1,000,001 positive reasons to come to the land of Israel that I'm not mentioning right now. That you could look up. I speak about that often. But when there's a danger, when the face of the White House of Lavan has changed a little bit, this is the time to get up and leave. That is the lesson that Jacob understood. We are the descendants of Jacob. Jacob was called Israel. We are the people of Israel. Will we learn from Jacob that he was able to wake up when the face of the White House of Lavan changed, and he was able to come and save himself and his family and his future and his wealth? I want just to finish with this. This I saw today on a website, a financial website by Casey, forget his last name. Listen to this closely. As economic woes worsen in the United States, more people will decide that they don't wish to have their government lessen the ability to make a living and raise taxes to pay for the government's loss in revenue. Even now, the exit door is beginning to close as the government realizes that the trend has begun. Unknown to most Americans, all of the restrictions needed to literally close the doors on the departure of both wealth and people have been passed into law, primarily under the USA Patriot Act of 2001 and the National Defense Authorization Act of 2011. These restrictions are not yet implemented. They're intended to be implemented automatically should a president declare a national state of emergency for any reason. If, for example, an economic crisis were to unfold, as it's presently doing, it's likely that a state of emergency would be declared. Similarly, if civil unrest were to escalate for any reason, it's likely that at some point a state of emergency would be declared. Therefore, for any milk cow who is considering an exit to a greener pasture, the window of opportunity may well close relatively soon. Remember, these acts have been passed into law. Dear folks, I beg of you, rethink your future. Save yourself, save your family, save your communities. The time to get out is now. Was yesterday. If not yesterday, today. If not today, for sure, tomorrow. May we return to be the smart and intelligent people that God had made us and created us to be.